Hello my beautiful Hammerhead and welcome back to the almost last video in the Dawnbringer narrative. What do I mean with almost the last one? Well, because we are in book 6, Hounds of Chaos. And yesterday we talked about the events that happened on the Gyran side. Today we're going to talk about the Akshi side, and tomorrow we're going to finish everything off with everything that happened after the big events here, and of course with the Vermindoom, the Skaven Tide, and my closing thoughts about the whole narrative of not only the Dawnbringer but maybe a little bit of the 3rd edition lore as well. But okay, let's dive into my notes that I have right in front of me here. Again, we leave Gyran, and on the other side of the Hammerhellion realm gate, we're looking at the events in Akshi. Just like in the first video, we begin the story in Hammerhal, but this time, of course, in Hammerhal Aksha. Messages from Emberguard reached the Grand Conclave, and with such positive news, Emberguard should be a symbol. To make it a real symbol, a contingent of Stormcast Eternals of the Hammerhands should be sent there. Vendis Hammerhand, however, was against the idea of leaving Hammerhal, especially with an imminent attack of the Gortide raiders on the northern horizon. The chance that Korgus Kal was leading the attacks was just too high not to take that. His plan was to lead a strike against the Khorne worshippers and give the repair crews of the city a little bit more time to rebuild the walls. So, first of all, Emberguard is, of course, the city our Dawnbringer crusade built to the east of Hammerhal. And yeah, well, riding east was dangerous, especially now. Why? Because maybe you remember Valpetras, our beloved character since day one, the arcanogeologist that reported of tectonic disturbances of a magnitude never recorded before. And then, of course, we still have Bellacor's cursed skies, and those are being struck by green lightning, making it even more dangerous for Stormcast Eternals, even in Thunderstrike armor, not to return back to Azir. So it gets worse by the minute for them. So only one chapter was sent forth to Emberguard, and it was led by Gabriel Sureheart. So Vendis took his Stormcasts north. But they were not alone. Regiments under the command of Talia Vedra were with them, even though she was not really that convinced that this is the best route of action. Lord Commander Bastion Cathalos, however, argued in Vedra's behalf that she would lead the mortals and leave the Stormcasts to their own goals, because Cathalos knew of Vendis' grudge with Kal. The fight, of course, was not that far away. Talia Vedra led cavaliers against packs of Korgoras, driven forward by Skarak the Bloodborne, while the Stormcast dispatched the leaders of the Gortide. The last war leader, the slaughter priest Laksha Bloodspeaker, fell under Vendis' hammer, and in a vision he saw a golden warrior with a broken blade and a Khorne demon with a big axe, of course. So we leave Vendis for a moment and venture to the east of Hammerhal and the Dark Oath tribe of Gunnar Brand. In the Snow Peak Mountains, in a sacred place called the Grove of Knives, the surrounding warlords met to swear oaths, renew alliances, and so on. But this time, one of them met with a vermin, a Skaven. That someone was Tanari, to be precise, Gunnar's rival. She's also in the box of the Warcry set with Gunnar. So her tribe was asked in eradicating the nearby Fireslayer Magmahold. The reward was, of course, strength and approval of the Everchosen, according to the Red. The Skaven admitted that Archaon did not trust the Skaven to fulfill their part, and so the Skaven used the Dark Oath tribes to finish what they started. You remember the short story in part 1 of Dawnbringer book 6 with Gunnar? So the last video. The task is to nail big chunks of warpstone into the nexus points of the realms. And of course, the tribes were rewarded with spells and other useful things. but Tanari was sure that other tribes had similar offers from that special emissary here. So as the other warlords arrived, the Skaven demon transformed into a swarm of smaller rats and vanished. Only Gunnar and one of the other warlords remained absent. As Gunnar arrived after a while, he explained that he had to cut off his cousin's arm as he handled Warpstone and the arm started to mutate. So divine gifts of the gods were one thing, but the stone of the vermin, that is something different. So no one was really trustful of the Skaven. And yeah, well, they're right. But in typical chaos faction manner, faction manner, they started to argue, draw weapons, but it was Brand who distracted everyone from violence when he asked where the last warlord and his tribe was, as his land bordered to the grove, and they should be the first to arrive, not the last. So it was that Gunnar and Tanari's tribe that rode into Warlord Urjok's, is his name, land to see what had happened. As they arrived in Urjok's mountain domain, it became clear what happened. The land changed because of the Warpstone, and the Dark Oath tribe picked up arms against the Skaven. The big chunk of Warpstone exploded and left none alive. In the Longhouse, they found Urjok's melded to his throne, mutated and almost unrecognizable, with fangs and tails sprouting from his flesh. The icons of the four gods twisted into a single rune, the symbol of the rat. Gunnar and Tanari together would march to Chakrik's Folly, the largest Skaven fort in the mountains of the Adamantine chain, and the Skaven would pay with blood. No other tribe should suffer the same fate. But their road to Chakrik's Folly was empty. No rats to be seen. Only the shadowy presence of wilder fiends in the trees around the tribes, and there were so many of them. No one could remember a time where there's so many wilder fiends around. The barren land was corrupt, just like Urjok's domain. The Skaven were uncharacteristically diligent here. Infiltrating the city through a tunnel that they scryed by the god speaker Nadia, with a little blood sacrifice of course. The plan was simple. The majority of the tribes would distract the Skaven on the front gate, while the rest would go through the tunnel. The tunnel was just closed off, so some of them had to hammer through the tiny wall. Not really tiny, but yeah, there was a wall in the way. They had to punch through that, basically. They remarked that the tunnel was probably commissioned as an escape route out of the city if things would go awry. Seeing that the Dark Oath are flooding out of the tunnel after they breached the wall, the Skaven started firing into the mass of the marauders, while clan rats were being butchered by the dozens. Their goal, the Warpstone foundries, and the Warpstone foundry was in sight, but from far away, bells began to toll. So, a quick distraction here from our friendly Dark Oath tribes and back to Gabriel Shorehart, that name will never go out of my mind. He and his cohort were fighting for 3 days at the edge of the Adamantine Chain Mountains to the east of Hammerhal. They didn't even reach Ambergard here. His blade shattered, but Korguskal was just waiting on the edge of the battle, just watching, as he was waiting for Vandus. Again in the distance was a sound, but not bells, but of thunder. The head of the Lord Celestant. That is the price Khorne demands of his champion. Vandus Hammerhand, his head was chosen by Kull. Ever since his return as a Stormcast Eternal, Kull's plan was shattered, and Khorne was silent. So just a little backstory. Vandus and Korguskal know each other since time immemorial, because even when Vandus was Vandal Blackfist, a mortal, and Korguskal was just a mere mortal, they knew each other. It was a while back, about 200 years or so, maybe a little bit more. I have to check up on that, but doesn't really matter. So after a century of silence, Khorne demanded of his champion to venture to Gur, the realm of beasts. And yeah, well, the continent of Rondol was the prize for that moment. So yeah, as everything in Gur is alive, even the continents, the islands and everything, Khorgos Khal slaughtered a continent. That is the thing, which is pretty awesome in my mind. But yeah, after his victory, he came back to Aqshy, obviously, and yeah, well, he slaughtered everything across the Adamantine chain, but Vendis was still missing. Khorne demanded one final fight. The champion of the Blood God against the champion of the Thunder God. Khal still stood there, watching the desperate struggles of the Lord Celestant with the broken blade as his thoughts were interrupted by the flare of a lightning striking the earth. It was Vendis and his hammer hands, of course. After their victory against the Slaughter Priest and its minions, they fell on the godhide, wounded but filled with holy rage. At this point, no one knew that Vendis again was witnessing the Lightning Man, the apparition that appears to him sometimes and gives him premonitions of the future and such on. Khal, on the other hand, contemplated what this petty vendetta was doing to him and Vendis, which is something that I really love, which I will tell you about in the next video. An eternity of red war awaited him, but what he saw was an incandescent figure bellowing his name. Vendis. He screamed the name of the warrior who was trying to reach him. And joining the fray, he felt stormcasts with every blow of his mighty axe. So it was Gabriel Sureheart, closer to the champion of Khorne than his friend Vendis. He charged. Dispatching the fleshhound Grizzlemaw, he saw an opening in Khal's attacks and used it to his opportunity. His broken blade slid across Khal's throat, but the champion's axe took his head. Khal's axe split reality and Gabriel's body and soul was pulled through, never to return to Azir. Vendis watched the head of his friend tumble to the ground as the mortally wounded Khorne champion lifted it to the heavens and laughed as black flames enveloped his head and healed his wounds. The ascension of Khorgos Khal happened in front of everyone, but only Vendis witnessed it in his full unholy glory. We saw glimpses of him in the past Stormbringer stories, but now it became reality. A winged hound-like abomination of a being of purest murder, which killed not only mortals, a continent, but immortals as well. Around Vendis and Khal, the fighting never stopped. It was mindless, wrathful, and it felt like it was eternal. And then death came from the mountains. What do I mean with that? For the last time, we will see what happens to the Dark Oath tribes in the east. The tribes attacked the Warpstone Foundry. It was a great tower covered with scaffolding and sparking cables, Skaven stuff as usual, and there were Skaven all over it. They were adjusting valves, tumbled and fell with every shaking of the tower, as there was already the seventh boom of the colossal bell at the top of the tower. The Dark Oath tribes tried to bring down the Warpstone spears that were rammed into the earth of Aqshy, but mutants and artillery stood in their way. By the time the bell tolled the 10th time, Gunnar and his followers destroyed a smaller screaming bell and killed its grey seer. The 11th toll of the bell split the earth apart. Skaven and tribespeople alike fell into the chasm, screaming never to be seen again, as the 12th toll of the bell rang, scratching and creaking of engines echoed from under the earth. Gunnar leapt on an abomination. He was about to leap for the Warpstone crystal when the 13th toll echoed. The earth ruptured, brass spikes shot out from the floor. Again, tribespeople and Skaven alike felt the same thing. This time it was not the fall into the abyss, but the insane ringing of bells, maddening and with the threat of losing their grips on reality. So Screech Vermin King manifested in front of the tower and looked at Gunnar, demanding him to bow. No one witnessing the horror of the Vermin King was safe, overwhelmed by the impossible being that stood before them. It was unable to stay still. The Vermin King twitched, cocked its head, and in the direction of the fight between the Skaven and Dark Oath, both sides ruptured and burst, and it looked again in the direction of Gunnar and his companions. The 13 voices of the Vermin King were pleased, as it expected the fight between the two factions far earlier. So Tanari was the one that recognized it as the emissary she met a couple of times, so also earlier in this video, realizing that the end goal was to break the realm and not poisoning the lands of the Sigmarites. Around them, reality broke and Blight City edged more and more into their vision, not just in Akshi. The Vermin King admitted to have used the Dark Oaths in their despicable plans, just like they were used by Archaon. Shocked by the revelation, Gunnar was the only one acting and swore to remember this. The Vermin King, however, was not really interested. It commanded them to go out and herald the coming of the Skaven, like that would be necessary with the rupturing of the realm. And well, the rupturing is a surprise that is named Blight City. You probably already saw the trailer where Blight City is just, erupting from the earth. But yeah, bellowing the retreat order, the Dark Oaths fought for survival. The mountain was fracturing and splitting apart. The only way was to climb out. No matter how much their muscles burned, rivalries were put aside and every Dark Oath helped each other out of this warpstone-infested gnawhole. Blight City, like magma from a volcano, erupted through the abused earth of the realm. The lands of the Dark Oaths were no more. Gunnar, in his rage, made vengeance his vow. And yeah, this one is a little bit shorter than the last one, but a lot of stuff happened here, which I really do enjoy. Again, we are going to wrap up the last of the stories, what happens in other realms, what happens with the end of Verdigris, what happens in Ambergard, and so on. Talia Vedra is still a thing, Isla is still a thing, Vandus Hammerhand is still a thing. All of those, and Abraxia, and yeah, all of those still have a tiny bit of story left, and that again is for the video tomorrow. So what are your thoughts on all of this? Please leave your thoughts and questions in the comment section down below. I'm really keen to know what you have to say. What was that sentence? I'm sorry. But yeah, while you're down there, please remember to do all the YouTube stuff, because hitting buttons is not only fun. Why? Because that way we can build a bigger community and talk more wargaming almost every day. And by that I of course mean like and subscribe, and if you want you can support me with the links in the description box down below. Otherwise, have a great day, my friend. Stay fantastic, stay hydrated, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, bye, bye.